Hello students, welcome to Swapna Physics classes. In this lecture I am going to explain you one more essay question for TS IPE examination. For TS first year IPE examination. Okay, and the question is, what are collisions? What are collisions? Explain the possible types of collisions and develop the theory for one-dimensional elastic collision. Okay, so we will define the collision. What are collisions? What are collisions? Collisions are nothing but a strong physical interaction, a strong physical interaction, a strong physical interaction among the bodies, involving exchange of momentum. Involving exchange of momentum is called collision. See here, a strong physical interaction among the bodies. This interaction need not be physical. The interaction between the bodies need not be physical contact. Contact ఉండని అవసరం లేదు. Physical contact ఉండని అవసరం లేదు. Okay, I will explain. For example, the interaction between electron proton, electron neutron. Okay, for example, I have an electron here and a proton is traveling towards this electron. Because of the attraction force, it moves in this way. It scatters away. After reaching to a particular distance, it will be repelled by this electron. Okay, and coming to electron, because of the repulsive force, between electron and electron, it will move away. The electron will move away from this electron. Okay, it need not be a physical contact. Physically contact ఉండనవసరం లేదు. ఓకే, దీనివల్ల ఇది అవే మూవ్ అవచ్చు, నియర్లీ మూవ్ అవచ్చు. ఓకేనా? బికాస్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ ఎలక్ట్రాన్ velocity might increase or velocity might decrease. Okay, so here a strong physical interaction among the bodies involving exchange of momentum. What is momentum? Momentum P is equal to mass into velocity. Okay, if the velocity increases, momentum increases. If the velocity decreases, momentum decreases. Okay, because of the strong interaction, physical interaction, it might not be a physical contact. ఇవి ఇంటరాక్ట్ అవుతాయి ఒకదానితో ఒకటి, కానీ కాంటాక్ట్ ఉండకపోవచ్చు లేదా కాంటాక్ట్ ఉండొచ్చు. ఇన్ కేస్ ఆఫ్ యాక్సిడెంట్, రోడ్ యాక్సిడెంట్స్, వన్ మోర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్. ఇన్ కేస్ ఆఫ్ రోడ్ యాక్సిడెంట్స్, వాట్ హ్యాపెన్స్? A lorry is moving on the road. Okay, and the velocity is very much high, and a person on the bicycle met with an accident because of this lorry. Okay, then after meeting accident, here there is a physical contact between the bodies and the person on the bicycle will be thrown away. Here the velocity of the bicycle increases because of the velocity of this huge body. Here velocity is exchanged between the bodies. That means momentum is exchanged. Why? Because this momentum and velocity are directly proportional to each other. Here momentum exchange takes place in case of collisions. Okay. And what are the types of collisions we have? Types of collisions. Keep the heading types of collisions. Types of collisions. What are the types of collisions we have? First one is elastic collision. Elastic collision. And one more is inelastic collision. Inelastic collision. It's a type of collision in which both momentum and kinetic energy are conserved. What is momentum? Momentum is P equals to mv, which will remain constant. Before collision and after collision. That is, momentum before collision will be equal to momentum after collision. Okay. They remain same. They remain constant. And coming to kinetic energy. What is kinetic energy we have? Kinetic energy is equal to half mv square. See here, momentum, both momentum and kinetic energy depends on the velocity only. So kinetic energy before collision will be equal to kinetic energy after collision. They remain constant. Okay. And coming to inelastic collision. The collision in which only momentum is conserved. Only momentum is conserved. But not kinetic energy. Where kinetic energy is not conserved, kinetic energy is not constant. Only momentum P equals to mv will remain constant. That is, momentum before collision will be equal to momentum after collision. Okay, kinetic energy changes in case of inelastic collision. Okay, and this momentum will be conserved. When there is no external force acting on it. Momentum ki force ki relation enti anukuntunnara? Let's see. I'm just differentiating this momentum with respect to time. Okay, which will be equal to m into dv by dt. Okay, what is dv by dt? It's an acceleration, right? It's an acceleration. What is mass into acceleration? It is a force. Mass into acceleration is a force. See, if this force remains constant, or if the force is equal to 0, then this dp by dt is equal to 0. Therefore, this p is constant. Momentum remains constant only when the force acted upon the object is equal to 0. Okay? When there is no external force acts on it, then the momentum remains constant. Copy these definitions. Just copy these definitions. And next one is develop the theory of one-dimensional elastic collision. What is one-dimensional elastic collision? Let's see. In Malli cheptunna, I am taking these lectures in exam point of view only. Exam point of view maatrame meeku classes cheptunna. Okay. one-dimensional elastic collision. Keep the heading one-dimensional elastic collision. One-dimensional elastic collision. Elastic collision. If the bodies, I'm considering any two bodies, okay, if the colliding bodies moves in a straight line, joining their center of masses, joining their center of masses before and after collision, then this type of collision, it is called head-on collision or one-dimensional elastic collision. Okay, in case of elastic collision, momentum and kinetic energy both are conserved, okay, or constant. See, if the colliding bodies moves in a straight line, so I am considering two bodies of masses m1 and m2. They are moving in a straight line. Okay, joining their center of masses. If these are the center of masses, okay, joining their center of masses, that means their center of masses must be in a straight line with each other, okay, before and after collision. After collision, before collision, their center of masses must be in a straight line with each other. Then this type of collision is known as head-on collision or elastic collision. Okay. If this mass is moving with u1 velocity and this one is with u2 velocity, let us consider a body of mass m1 which is moving with velocity u1 and another body m2 of mass m2 which is moving with velocity u2. Okay, this is before collision. And if the velocity of mass m1 is greater than m2, if the velocity of mass m1 is greater than the mass m2 velocity, okay, then after some time what happens? This mass collides with this mass. m1 collides with m2. The collision takes place between these two masses. Collision takes place after some time between these two masses. Okay, this is during collision. Okay, and after collision also they have to move in the same direction with the velocities v1 and v2. After collision also they have to move in the same direction in a straight line, okay, and they are moving with velocity v1 and v2. This is after collision. Okay, so as per one-dimensional elastic collision, momentum after collision will be equal to momentum before collision, and kinetic energy before collision is equal to kinetic energy after collision. Let's derive the final velocities, that is after collision. What are the velocities after collision? Just draw these diagrams in your notebook. Shall I rub this? Copy చేసుకోవాలి, పాజ్ చేసి స్క్రీన్ షాట్ అనేది తీసుకోండి. Let us derive the final velocities. Let us derive the final velocities of these two masses after collision. Okay. According to law of conservation, according to law of conservation of momentum. Okay, the momentum before collision is equal to momentum after collision. What is momentum? Momentum is P equals to mass into velocity. Okay, before collision we have masses m1 which is moving with velocity u1 and mass m2 which is moving with velocity u2, and after collision mass m1 moves with velocity v1 and m2 moves with velocity v2. Okay, now the momentum before collision is m1 u1 mass into velocity plus m2 u2 plus m2 u2. This is before collision. Momentum before collision is equal to momentum after collision, that is m1 v1 plus m2 v2. This is equation number 1. Now bring m1 towards one side, m2 towards another side. Okay, I am taking common m1 into u1, and if you bring towards this side it will be minus v1. I am taking m1 as common, which is equal to m2. I am taking m2 common, and if you bring this towards right hand side you will have v2 minus u2. This is equation number 2. Now according to law of conservation of kinetic energy, according to law of conservation of kinetic energy. What is kinetic energy? Kinetic energy is half mv square. So the kinetic energy before collision is equal to kinetic energy after collision in case of elastic collision, right? So what is kinetic energy? Half m1 before collision is m1 u1 square plus half m2 u2 square, which is equal to half m1 v1 square plus half m2 v2 square. If you bring this half common or outside the bracket, then you will have m1 u1 square plus m2 u2 square, which is equal to half m1 v1 square plus m2 v2 square. Half of get cancelled. Okay, now bring all the m1 terms towards one side, m2 terms towards another side. Okay, I am taking m1 common. We have u1 square, we just bring this towards left hand side, minus v1 square, which is equal to, bring this towards right hand side, I am taking common m2, we left with v2 square minus u2 square. Okay, a square minus b square is equal to a minus b into a plus b, mathematical formula. Okay, now m1 into, this is a square minus b square, nothing but a minus b, that is u1 minus v1, okay, into a plus b, that is u1 plus v1, which is equal to m2 into v2 minus u2 into v2 plus u2. This is equation number 3. Keep it in box. Keep these equations in box. Okay. Now divide equation 3 with equation 2. I'm just dividing this equation 3 with equation 2. Okay. Now this will be equal to m1 u1 minus v1 into u1 plus v1 divided by m1 u1 minus v1, which will be equal to m2 v2 minus u2 into v2 plus u2 divided by m2 v2 minus u2. Okay, you just observe carefully. m1 get cancelled, u1 minus v1 cancelled, m2 u2 v2 minus u2. Then we left with u1 plus v1 equals to v2 plus u2. Okay, now bring this towards left side and this one towards right side. u1 minus u2 equals to v2 minus v1. v2 minus v1. This is equation number 4. Equation number 4. Copy this. Now write a sentence. In case of elastic collision, the relative velocities, I'm relating the velocities, these two velocities here. Before collision, the relative velocity of approach, as u1 is greater than u2, the relative velocity of approach before collision will be equal to the relative velocity of separation after collision. Okay, the relative velocities of approach before collision is equal to the relative velocity of separation before collision. Okay, these are equal. And ఎంత టైంలో అప్రోచ్ అవుతున్నాయో అంత టైంలో సెపరేట్ అవుతాయి. Okay, now I'm taking this equation number 4 and taking this v2 outside on one side, which is equal to u1 minus u2 plus v1. Okay, I'm just bringing this v1 towards left side. Okay, here what I'm doing, I want to find out v1. Therefore I'm substituting this v2 in equation number 1. Substitute v2 in equation number 1. Okay, you just substitute here m1 u1 plus m2 u2, which is equal to m1 v1 plus m2 times of what is v2, u1 minus u2 plus v1. Okay, I want to find out v1. For that purpose I have to eliminate v2. We have to find out v1 and v2. Okay, the velocities after collision. Initially మనకి తెలుసు objects యొక్క velocity u1 u2 values. For example, a car met with an accident with a lorry. Okay, and the lorry drivers and the car driver knows the initial velocities of that lorry and the car. Accelerometer ఉంటుంది కదా, దాన్ని చూస్తే మనకి తెలిసిపోద్ది. అండ్ if you know the masses of this lorry and car, then using these equations you can find out the final velocities of lorry and the car after collision. Okay, so to find out v1 I have to eliminate v2 because this is unknown value. To find out v2 I have to eliminate v1. So that to find out v1 I am eliminating v2. చూడండి ఈక్వేషన్లో v2 లేదు కదా. ఓకే, now I am bringing all the terms except this v1 towards left side. m1 u1 plus m2 u2 is equal to, I am bringing the terms towards left side, minus m2 u1 minus when you bring this minus towards left side it will become plus m2 u2 equals to m1 v1 plus m2 v1. Just multiply this m2 with the quantities in the bracket and then bring the quantities towards left side except v1 terms, v1 quantities. Okay, now just observe carefully, m2 u2 plus m2 u2 will be 2 m2 u2. Okay, plus I am taking u1 as common, u1 common here, you are left with m1 minus m2. This will be equal to, I am taking v1 common, m1 plus m2. Okay, therefore this v1 is equal to, you just bring this towards left side, v1 is equal to u1 times, I am writing direct equation, m1 minus m2 divided by m1 plus m2 into u1. Okay, plus 2m2 by m1 plus m2 into u2. This is the equation for final velocity of first object, final velocity of m1. This is the equation for final velocity of m1. Okay, now I want to find out the final velocity of m2, that is v2. To find out the v2 I have to eliminate v1. For that purpose what I am doing, using equation number 4, I have to eliminate v1. For that purpose I am taking v1 on one side and remaining terms on another side, minus u1. Now substitute v1 in equation 1. Same process. ఇది ఎలా చేసామో ఇప్పుడు కూడా అలాగే చేస్తాం. Okay, what is equation number 1 we have? This is equation number 1. Now substitute v1 in this equation. m1 u1 plus m2 u2 is equal to m1 times what is v1, v2 plus u2 minus u1 plus m2 v2. Now just bring v2 terms on one side and remaining terms on another side. Okay, v2 on one side, that is m2 v2 plus m1 v2. Okay, and remaining terms on another side, m1 u1 plus m2 u2. Okay, this will be minus m1 u2 plus m1 u1. Solve cheyandi meeru. Okay, I am taking common this v2, m2 plus m1 or m1 plus m2. I am writing directly. Inko step rayakunda, extra step rayakunda. Okay, which is equal to, take common, see, observe carefully, m2 u2, m1 u1 will be 2m1 u1. Okay, and I am taking u2 common, we left with M2 minus M1. Okay. Now this V2 is equal to M2 minus M1 by M1 plus M2. Bring this to us this side into U2 plus 2M1 by M1 plus M2 into U1. This is the final velocity equation for mass M2. Okay. So this is the answer for this equation. Okay. And you just write as it is in your examination for getting full marks. Okay. And please share my videos with your friends so that they might it might be helpful for passing out their examinations. Okay, I had given 4 essay important questions and I am explaining one by one. After completing of these 4 questions, I will explain short answer questions. First of all, I will give the list of short answer questions and then after I will explain one by one. Okay, please like, share and subscribe my videos. Okay, bye.